We all loved to go out to the Van Leuven ranch. There were horses, cows, bull, yes, those too, dogs, chickens, and cats. It was always fun out there. Besides, we had fun with the cousins. When I say we, I'm talking about Janie, Jack, and Jill Chappell. We are the 3 J's. Johnny must not have been there that day because he usually was in charge of Skipper, who was the horse. Dixie had the honors that day, and she decided she should take all 3 of us on a ride to the orchard. But first, we had to get a photo on Skipper. All of us were on top of the horse, all 4 of us. After all, Derry wasn't going to follow us all over the county on foot. He was in charge of us while Aunt Edith was doing something down at the barn. He had to line us up outside the house. We used an old box to get on top of Skipper. We smiled at the photographer. Then we were ready to go on our adventure. We went out the driveway, opened up the gate to go up the hill. Derry went into the house. We started up the hill along the path wide enough for trucks. But either Dixie or Skipper decided to take a shortcut. She wasn't going to mess around with the long way. So she turned the Skipper to go uphill. It lasted about 3 steps. Jill was the first to slide off. Then Jack came next, and I was last. 3 of us landed on the ground with Jill on the bottom of the pile. I probably had insisted on the ride after Dixie, or I would have been on the bottom and Jack and Jill would have been on me. We were yelling for help. Derry came in running as fast as he could. He carried Jill into the house. She had the wind knocked out of her. Jack had a soft landing on Jill, and I had the softest landing of all. Derry called his mom to let her know what had happened. She said Jill had to stay inside and lay down. She had the wind knocked out of her and she was not fit for riding the horse. I think Jack, Dixie, and I got to continue on with the ride. But Jill had to stay back. And even when we were adults, Jill remembers getting mad because she couldn't get back on the horse and ride that day. Another time at the Van Leuvens, I remember we were weeding the garden and Derry was supervising us. I remember Jack and Jill, Dixie and Derry. I don't remember Johnny being there. Anyway, Derry was the oldest and he wanted to impress us. So he dug around and found a worm, dusted it off, and he ate it. It was disgusting, but we remember him doing it. Dixie and I had a great time one summer afternoon. We must have been about 5 and 8. Anyway, we were allowed to go up to the spring and play. When I say a spring, it's a little river that ran down the hill. The clay in the soil was great for molding things like bowls and cups. We really got dirty, and the nearest water was, of course, in the storage house, where the spring fed it. It was just a cement building, and the spring led right into it, and it was only about 1 foot deep because it was probably in the spring, meaning it was in the early summer. We splashed around and we had a great time. Then we went down the hill to the house. Aunt Edith was hopping mad at us. The water from that storage tank went down to the house and was the source of the drinking water there. Also for washing dishes and all sorts of things, taking showers, all the water needs in the house. I don't remember getting a spanking, but we sure deserved it. And we never did that again. I need to tell a couple more stories about being up at the Van Leuven Ranch. We made up our own word. It's called bolitis. And Jill had it bad. It means being afraid of the bulls that were on the property. There was one day when my mom and Jill and I were out berry picking, and we were quite a ways from the house. And this bull came up the hill running at top speed because he was after the cows that were ahead of him. And Jill started crying, and we all ran back to the house. It took us, I think we were probably about a half mile away, so it was a little ways away. And the last story I'm going to share today is about Jack and Donnie. Donnie was Jack's friend growing up, and so he had invited him out to play with him. I think they were probably about 8. They were big enough to have BB guns. And it was probably in the early summer because there wasn't any hay in the barn. But they took the BB guns down to the barn and were shooting them inside the barn. Pretty soon, Jack and Donnie came up to the house and they were looking for a Band-Aid. Well, Aunt Edith got wind of this and she says, "Why do you need a Band-Aid?" He had gone ahead and had shot his gun, and a bullet had ricocheted around the barn and landed in his eyebrow. Anyway, that was the end of their BB guns in the barn. I hope you enjoyed these stories.